And we're live. Happy Solemnity of St. Joseph. We have an excellent show. Okay, before we had Seamus, I don't know where Seamus went. So hopefully we get Seamus back. Rosie, you can work on that. But happy Solemnity of St. Joseph. As some of you may have seen, we just hit 25,000 subscribers on YouTube, along with a small army on audio platforms. So thank you so much to everyone who subscribed. If you would like, and you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe now. But we have an excellent show prepared for you today, and we'll be focusing on the emotional debate over deportations and immigration enforcement. JD Vance with another banger speech, this time addressing AI and the populist versus tech bro right, something I personally am very interested in. Tim Walz gingerly stepping back into the arena of politics, some updates on the Kansas black mass situation, and a Hamilton jump scare in the Twilight Zone today. But first, we welcome on Seamus Coughlin.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was much more dramatic. Actually, we might be doing that going forward.
Yeah, I disappeared on accident. I was really just trying to make a grand thematic entrance. How's everybody doing today?
Fantastic.
Feeling good. Josh, how are you feeling?
Really good. Happy Feast of St. Joseph to everybody. Or solemnity, as we question whether we get called out in the comment sections for not calling it.
Oh, definitely solemnity. Come on, man. Anything you gave up for Lent, you can have it today, brother. And
no, it is a solemnity. All right.
No, but that's true. But here's the thing. Everyone, I mean, you're as Irish as a leprechaun, Seamus, but not, everyone gets to say that they're Irish on St. Patty's Day. So how about we all get to declare we're Italian on St. Joseph's Day? Like, that's the big for the Italians. They love St. Joseph's Day. That's why I'm wearing red for them. It's a big celebration. So.
I talk with my hands.
Can't believe you call St. Joseph Italian.
No, I'm just saying the Italians have if you look at like New York, Boston, all these other areas, the Italians were always big in celebrating St. Joseph more than anyone else. It's not like he's theirs, but I appreciate their devotion. I'm trying to pay my respects.
I agree with that. St. Joseph's fantastic. St. Joseph's one of my favorite saints. Probably my favorite saint next to the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Hardest tagline, Terror of Demons.
Absolutely.
Name me a harder tagline than Terror of Demons.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. And Seamus, just you've been on the show a few times, but we almost never need to worry about being corrected or called out by anyone other than Josh. So the comments, they might do their thing, but Josh is always ready to hit you on a technicality or make sure they're speaking properly. So we really appreciate that about him.
If the internet, people will find things to call Josh out on for not calling us out on.
That's probably true. I mean, when it comes to Lent, though, I'm what's known as I think what's the technical term? I'm known better in Latin. In English, it's bad Catholic, and so I absolutely hate giving up meat. I'm supposed to do it every Friday of the year, but it's optional outside of Lent. But in Lent, so like if there's a meat Friday, a great solemnity, dude, I know about it. Let me tell you.
You know when they all are.
And it's like, St. Patrick is just a feast. It's not a solemnity. So if it's on a Friday, all the Irish say, we want to eat meat today. And you're like, no. But if you fly up to Boston, then you can because it's their patron saint. So I know these things.
All right, Josh.
Wow. So you know all the Lenten loopholes.
Come on, brother.
I don't know if it applies to meat on Fridays, but I will say that my understanding is in Savannah, Georgia, where I lived for about 10 years. They also issue special dispensations on St. Patrick's Day because they have one of the largest St. Patrick's Day parades in the entire world. And it's a very important holiday to that city particularly.
Yeah, so the bishop can dispense with it on those days, but yeah, it's not so much. I mean, like, look, I should probably be a better Catholic, but I hate the taste of fish. That's really what it is.
All right, Seamus, before we get into our ad for today, I came into the church Easter last year. Seamus's witness on Timcast was a part of my conversion story. Shout out Allie from the chat. Chat's giving Seamus love.
Thank you. I massively appreciate that. That is a huge compliment. That is a massive compliment. God bless you.
That is what it's all about. And today's show is sponsored by Charity Mobile. Let's talk Charity Mobile, the pro-life phone company. When you switch to Charity Mobile, 5% of your monthly plan goes to the pro-life, pro-family charity of your choice at no extra cost to you. It's everyday living made effortless giving. It's time to make the switch. With the same nationwide coverage as the major carriers, Charity Mobile has a variety of plans to fit every need, from basic talk and text options to unlimited data, and you can get up to 8 lines. They offer a range of phones, from simple flip phones to the latest 5G smartphones, or you can bring your own compatible device. No contracts, no termination fees, and a 30-day guarantee. So there's no risk in giving them a try. Charity Mobile has been in business for nearly 30 years, providing U.S.-based customer service by phone, chat, or email. So why not buy the way you believe and support causes that matter to you with your everyday phone use? New customers can get a free phone after instant credit, plus free activation and free standard shipping with promo code LOOPcast. They have been a fantastic partner to this show. Thank you so much to the Charity Mobile Gang, and go check them out.
Make the switch.
Make the switch. So
we will. Well, this is something my wife and I have sort of been talking about. We're in a mixed marriage. I had Xfinity and she had Verizon. So we need to figure out our new cell phone carrier. It sounds like Charity Mobile might be a good option.
Gosh, you're so good for the show, Seamus.
This is good.
Let's see. I'll check it out.
Well done. All right. So go check out Charity Mobile. But today I wanted to talk about, I will say I'll direct people to the last episode. We talked about a bit more of the process, technical, legislative, judicial fight over what's happening in terms of deportation. A major promise of the Trump administration would be deportation on a mass scale. So we covered that pretty well the last time. I think I'm going to now shift
I feel
focus.
Like it's just.
If I could finish, Josh.
I'm going to correct you.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, dude. All right. Here's what I'm challenging the boys with today. Okay. So let's just take a look. Deportation's well underway. No question about it. Some want more, some want less, but indisputed. We have some numbers here. First month, 37,660, weekly average of 9,415. They've been very public on social media messaging that, hey, we're getting this done. We're doing it. And I think now we shift more to a bit of a more emotional battle going on when it comes to what type of stories are being pushed to the forefront. So I just think what I'd like to talk to you guys about is, say put you in a situation, and we're all Catholic here, where you have to go talk to some family members or some friends that maybe are well-meaning and maybe intellectually understand the arguments for deportation, but are now seeing some of these stories. So some of the sympathy stories, for example, is the sister of one of the illegal Venezuelan migrants that were sent to El Salvador. We don't know if this person was detained by ICE and does not know where he is. She suspects that he was sent to the El Salvador prison. So that's one that's been tossed around quite a bit. Colorado's best known immigration advocate, Jeanette Vizguera, has been detained by ICE. She's famous for actually hiding in the basement of a church for 3 years while being kind of this vocal voice of immigration reform and against deportations. And the one that probably got the most traction, some might consider this cruel. I don't know. I'm not going to play the music here, but the song Closing Time, Semisonic, was used with this video. The White House has been doing a lot of these kind of, I don't know, Seamus, you might be able to speak to it better than me, but like meme, they're pretty funny. I'm not going to lie, but many
hilarious.
Are calling these cruel, maybe a little bit uncomfortable with it. And so at this point, basically the question I have for you guys and the summary from the Catholic perspective is we get Bishop Mark J. Seitz saying in a statement that he and his staff will be joining this left-wing march and vigil in solidarity with migrants. Quote, the heart-wrenching pain coursing through our community is real, indiscriminate in immigration enforcement, the denial of due process, and the pulling apart of families that strike at our community and our grave attacks on human dignity. The threat of mass deportations is untenable and immoral and demands a credible response. So here's the challenge.
I want to ask a question. First of all, did he say indiscriminate immigration response? That's the concern, that we're going after everybody who breaks the law. That's what the government is supposed to do. You don't want them to selectively enforce it. Secondly, one of the stories you mentioned earlier, I was reading prior to the show about this man who was deported. He had Tren de Aragua tattoos, and his family was insisting he just got them because he liked how they looked. He just got the clock tattoo because it had sentimental value to him. The reality is, when there is a cartel gang / terror organization that is invading our country, that is crossing our borders, that is killing our citizens, and you are an illegal immigrant who gets a tattoo which signifies you are part of that criminal organization, you should expect to be deported. Now, it's unfortunate if this particular individual was genuinely this confused and really and truly had no idea that these were gang tattoos that he was getting, but we can't fail to observe patterns and start allowing any and every person with a tattoo that signifies they're part of a criminal organization to stay in this country on the off chance that somebody who didn't know the gang tattoo was a gang tattoo gets one and still wants to remain in the country.
Even if it's a mistake, like, dude, if a guy comes into our country illegally and has a Nazi tattoo,
exactly. I didn't. I
Sorry,
thought it was the
bro.
Buddhist.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I thought it was the Buddhist tattoo of peace. He did it backwards. I didn't know that this was a Nazi symbol. You're gone. You're leaving the
Bye-bye.
country. And you don't have, you don't have an unlimited right to be here without respecting our laws. This is what the Catechism says. I believe it's Catechism 2241. Migrants are required to, with gratitude, accept and obey the laws of host nations. One of those laws, at the most basic and fundamental level, if you are an immigrant, would be immigration law, not entering illegally. So, this idea that people can break our laws and remain here is not a Catholic idea. This conceptualization that we have to have completely open borders and that our government is not able to exercise its necessary civil duty of looking after the common good and the welfare of native-born citizens. It's not a Catholic idea that isn't allowed. And what's happened is the left has weaponized people's empathy and their good nature against people. There's an important question we have to ask here, and you alluded to it earlier, Tom, but what are they showing us, right? There's this idea of who are you rooting for? When somebody's family is murdered by migrants, when their daughter or wife is brutalized by someone who shouldn't be here, we don't see pictures of their crying face and their tears in the media, right? But anytime a migrant is deported, we're going to see crying family members, people who love them and want them to remain here. The reality is, when you want a nation as robust and successful and secure as the United States has been, which is undeniably true, it's why everyone wants to come here, you have to make decisions that are going to upset some people. Now, what would we rather have? Native citizens who have not broken any laws suffering because we haven't thoroughly vetted the people entering into our country and now citizens are being victimized? Or do we want to deport people who have already told us by their very act of entering illegally that they don't respect us and our laws?
That's it. I mean, AOC and Tom Holland got into this a while back. She's like, it's not illegal. And he's like,
it is.
Well, yeah, it is. Like, there's several laws that they've violated. And she goes, not if they're seeking asylum. He goes, there's a proper way to seek asylum. It is at a port of entry. You don't just end up somewhere in Missouri like, oh, sorry, I'm seeking asylum. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I also just want to mention, too, it is a miracle, an absolute miracle that Trump was able to get border crossings down to just 9,000 in a month, because I was told that in order to secure the border, we needed to pass a nonpartisan border bill, which actually required that we allow up to 5,000 people to cross the border per day for several straight days, and that the number had to surpass 5,000 per day on average before the government would actually kick in and shut down the border. And even then, they would only do it temporarily. And let's also not forget that the border also required $60 billion to be sent to Ukraine. I was told that we could not possibly secure the border without that bill having been passed. And I was also told that Trump shut that bill down because he didn't actually want to solve the problem. He just wanted to campaign on it. So I just want to say, Trump being able to get illegal border crossings down to less than 2 days worth of the status quo that it would have been set by that bill would have allowed is an absolute miracle, because I was told it was impossible to do it any other way.
Mm-hmm. Reliably informed, too.
Wow.
Reliably informed.
Seamus with the receipts.
I will say, too, just on this point,
I kind of want to get a dig in on the Oklahoma senator that was pushing that crappy.
Langford.
Langford, yeah.
Yeah.
But and just imagine if the Republicans had passed that bill. Imagine what would happen if that became the law of the land. Then as soon as Trump got into office and tried shutting down the border, everyone would have said, well, hold on a second. We already have a border bill that says 5,000 people
let it work
per day.
Yeah, it's a constitutional crisis.
It's exactly. So here's what I actually think happened, because what we kept hearing from the media was that Trump shut the border bill down because he wanted to campaign on it. This is my theory. I'm just speculating.
Oh,
but
bring it.
What I would venture to guess happened is when this bill was being discussed, Trump called up elected Republican officials and told them what his internal polling said about his chances of victory, informed them that he was probably going to win, and that this bill was going to hurt the country a lot more than it was going to help it once he won, because it does require allowing X number of people over the border every single month. And he said, if you pass this, it is going to make it nearly impossible for me to shut down the border when I win, and I will win. That's what I am guessing happened. But we were told by the media, well, Trump just wanted to campaign on the issue. That's why he got that bill shut down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so all that makes sense, Seamus, of course. I'm getting back to the more, I guess, personal stories that you're hearing about deportation. And even the guy with the tattoo is a good example of this. So, like, for example, Trump turned the CBP One app that was actually used to fly illegal immigrants into the country into a self-deport option. And to me, in terms of like giving people as much grace as possible, he said, if you use this app in self-deport because you're here illegally, you still could have the chance of coming back to the country. If you're going in and like, I'm thinking of like police,
you just have to do it.
If you go in, do you think any criminal is going to be like, yep, I got the drugs in here, I have all the weapons in here, like you can just take me? Anyone that's doing something illegally or enjoying benefits of an illegal nature is going to fight back pretty hard or come up with a narrative as to, no, this actually isn't. Like, what do you think the wife of gang members are going to say? Oh yeah, this is a gang tattoo for sure. He deserves to be there. They're going to come up with all these kind of reasons. And I've just seen enough. I think it was Scott Bessent was saying with fake news and just news in general, he thought it was kind of ridiculous before he got into as the Treasury Secretary. He's like, now I actually don't think it's an extreme term enough. Like people start with a story. Say it again.
What is it that he didn't think was extreme enough? I'm not sure I'm following you.
The term fake news. So he's like, okay. I think that they're exaggerating that. Yes, it might be unfavorable, but you know, fake news might be too strong of a term. Now that he's on the inside, he's saying, I had the experience of working with a New York Times reporter who literally made up an entire story and then contacted him at the last second saying, any comment? And it was saying that they were talking about cutting the IRS by a specific number. He's like, we had never talked about that number. That wasn't even a discussion yet. That was just made up, thrown at me, and published. That's not actual journalism. That's activism and or state journalism, in this case, the resistance journalism. And I feel like I'm kind of seeing that here of all of these people with, you know, immigration activist, pro bono attorney in their bio coming forward with these stories that are based on assertions essentially that we can't actually really verify. Or in the case of this woman who's been hiding in the basement of a church, Trump tried to deport her back in 2017. She's been here illegally since. Why are we like the framing on these things I think are important. If you're having good faith conversations with say a relative that actually is like a good person, probably Catholic, actually cares about the country, to just come in with the receipts of like, okay, I want you to look at this news story specifically and just think with me for a second. What do you think someone would say in this situation, or examples of this kind of activism journalism in the past to get people past the kind of squeamishness at this point? I don't know. I think the American public in general is ready for this, but Josh, you were even showing me before the show, like someone that's pretty good natured was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they deported this person, member of the community, yada, yada, yada. And then 2 sentences later was like, okay, correction. She actually was a drug dealer. Didn't have all the information. It's like,
yeah. And she looked, I mean, honestly, this woman looked, you know, youthful. She looked very pretty, you know, just, you think, gosh, why would we be deporting someone like this? It's not some grizzly, tattooed, muscular dude that you're afraid he's going to beat the crap out of you. And you're like, oh, this person seems, gosh, it seems kind of nice. Why are we deporting, you know, little Susie here or whatever her name is? And it turns out, yeah, actually, she's a drug dealer. Oh, okay, great. And the thing is, this is what kind of drives me crazy. So, like, you know, you mentioned that the Bishop of El Paso was criticizing how indiscriminate and irrational and immoral all this stuff is. And then they put up something on the pedestal. They put up some sort of, you know, tearjerker case. And it's like, okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe we can examine each individual case here. And maybe, you know, here's a crazy idea. You know, if you're talking about the, you know, deportation of tens of thousands of people, maybe somebody we got wrong. Is that impossible? No, it's not impossible. They might get back to the home country and then they can appeal to our government and say, you screwed this up. Can we do something? But this idea that therefore, I mean, the left wants it to be, oh, we found a mistake here. Shut it all down.
Exactly.
That's what they want. They want to shut everything down because they don't want any deportations at all. And you know what? No, this is the great homecoming tour, 2025, baby. We're going to send you back home. And if it's a mistake, you know, fill out the papers. We'll make it work. But the thing is, all of this comes from Donald Trump thought Democrats were just campaigning like, you know, lefties. And then when they got to Washington, when he first got there in his first term, he thought there would be some sort of grand compromise. And actually, Donald Trump is not like hardcore, super hardcore in immigration. He was totally willing to sign off on a bill that would, okay, sure, we'll give citizenship, a path to citizenship to people who are illegally. I think he would have done that. But he's like, I got to have a border and I got to make sure people aren't crossing through. And he kept trying to make overtures to the Democratic Party, and they were having none of it because they're like, no, you were never legitimately elected. We're going to stop everything you have going on here. And so he's like, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. Border security first. Lock that border down.
Exactly.
Deport the thugs and the murderers and the rapists. And then maybe we can talk about legislation.
Well, and this is one of the things that's so peculiar about this conversation. There's essentially two sides to it. The United States government should have some oversight over who's entering our country. We, the people, should have some voice with respect to the kind of legislation that exists for allowing people into the country. We should, as a nation, have some kind of legal process for entry, or no, that's mean because somebody who wasn't a murderer might get deported. The reality is, even though people won't necessarily give assent to the idea that these are effectively the only two positions, in truth they are, because as soon as we try to enforce any kind of immigration law, we're immediately told that we're monstrous for doing so because some person who's somewhat sympathetic is now going to suffer as a result. Well, here's the reality. Many people who are sympathetic, if we're just going to go based off of that subjective metric, are going to suffer when we allow our nation to be flooded. For the past several years, millions, and I mean literally millions of people entered this country illegally. They're not supposed to be here. We are well within our right to send those people back. What the Democrats did is they abdicated their responsibility to enforce the laws that the people of this nation voted for representatives to put in place. So then what happened was, as people started to flood in and they started to fly them to different states, including swing states, when we're trying to have this open conversation about whether illegals should be allowed to vote in our elections or already are, everyone who's complaining about there being a constitutional process and Trump not following the, quote unquote, status quo or conventional processes, which I wouldn't even agree that he isn't. They were totally silent about this. So right. I just want to make this point. Let's just imagine for a moment. Let's just imagine for a moment that as a country, we all got together and we voted. We want open borders, let everybody in. It was totally fine that we now know that at least 30,000 convicted murderers entered under Biden's regime, which is true. We now know that. It's totally fine that tens of thousands of rapists entered. It's totally fine that even people who aren't rapists and murderers, but were just blatantly disrespecting our laws by the hundreds of thousands and millions entered. We're fine with that. But then the Republicans said, you might be okay with that. The entire country might think it is wildly unpopular to enforce border laws at all. But what we're going to do is we're going to get right-wing militias together outside of state authority and outside of the legal process and send them to the border to guard it. Everyone would call that a coup, and rightfully so. Everyone would say that that was a violation of our legal processes. But when the exact opposite happens, when rather than a sin of commission, it's a sin of omission, and the government says, yes, people have voted for these laws to be in place, but we're just going to choose not to enforce them and let millions of people in. That is on an equal level of constitutional crisis
as
if we were to commission citizens to act outside of the government process and enforce laws that nobody voted for. No one voted for open borders, but we got them anyway because our government completely disregarded the will of the people. And so now we have to retroactively enforce those laws. And for everyone who says deportations are an ugly and upsetting thing, I agree that in some circumstances they can be, which is why we need to ensure that the people who enter here are properly vetted so that we do not have to deport them. Because it is an inevitability that we will if we just allow people to enter without being vetted through our legal process.
100%. I think what Seamus said is absolutely on the money because, like, we've had, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump in recent memory impeached. But what Joe Biden did with regards to the border was it was so obviously that he should have been removed from office. Mm-hmm. Treason.
Yeah. And just think too,
just get to say, I'm not going to enforce this law.
Yeah. And how many, to your point on vetting, you remember, I remember seeing the videos of just passports dropped off at the border before people came in. And then they're asked, what name do you want to go by? Make sure it's one you like, because this is what you're going to be in our system. Which is it, like, imagine that standard apply. I have to take my shoes off to fly. Like, imagine that standard.
Like, so
you
insane.
know what I mean? What? In what world would that standard ever work? Other than voting in California, of course, because you don't have proof ID. But yeah, it's so insane.
Well, this is also, I just want to jump in here and mention something. This is one of the hilarious things about the leftist euphemism for illegal alien being undocumented migrant. They say this as if a person being undocumented is something we should accept. When is the left ever okay with anything being undocumented? Every single dollar that I earn throughout the course of the year has to be documented on a W-9 or a W-2. Every single gun that I have needs to be registered, and they argue that if it isn't on a state or even federal registry, which many of them are pushing for, then we're just living in this anarchaic society where everyone's going to be killed. Literally every single thing that you do, and you know this especially if you run a business, every single thing you do has piles and piles and piles of paperwork and documentation behind it if you're a citizen. And if you were to argue that you should be able to opt out of those documents, they would regard you as if you were some kind of complete and total lunatic, because the system would fall apart without all of that bureaucratic paperwork. But then we're just supposed to let millions of people without any papers over the border?
You know, and they had their Democratic National Convention last year in Chicago, and they required people to have voter ID. And I tried getting in there. I'm just saying, look, I'm just an undocumented delegate. Just let me in. Didn't work. I don't know.
Would you have voted for Kamala?
That's a no.
But she's brat.
She is brat. This is true. Confirmed brat. And we'll get to Tim Walz in a little bit here, but before that, so anytime JD Vance has a new speech, I'm always closely watching. I really enjoyed his speeches. I think they're well done. But what caught my eye was the American Dynamism Conference. He was the keynote at it, and he started with a reference to Pope John Paul II's Labora Exercens. Direct quote, "Through work, man must earn his daily bread and contribute to the continual advance of science and technology, and above all, to elevating unceasingly the culture of moral level of that society in which he lives in a community with those who belong to the same family." Number two, I've been actively following we'll call it the tech bro right. I think he refers to it as the techno optimist and the populist right of the war over the incoming AI disruption. I think there's no question in anyone's mind. I started using AI not long ago. It's going to impact everyone's lives, small ways, soon to be large ways. And his argument is that he wants to embrace it head on. And it was actually a Catholic journalist, I think at the National Catholic Register, Jonathan Liedl. He commented under something JD Vance said, and he kind of posited a response to this divide that we see kind of bubbling over, say like Elon Musk versus say Steve Bannon. And this is a long clip here, but I think addresses this well and lays out a vision for how the administration seeks to answer that question. So strap in for this clip. It's good.
I think the populists, when they look at the future and when they compare it to what's happened in the past, I think a lot of them see alienation of workers from their jobs, from their communities, from their sense of solidarity. You see the alienation of people from their sense of purpose. And importantly, they see a leadership class that believes welfare can replace a job and an application on a phone can replace a sense of purpose. Now, I remember a Silicon Valley dinner in particular back when I was in my tech days, where my wife and I were sitting around talking to some of the leaders of the important technology firms of the United States, and this was probably in 2016 or 2017. And I was talking about my real worry that we were heading in a direction where America could no longer support middle-class families working on middle-class wages. And importantly, that even if you had enough economic dynamism to provide the wealth to ensure those people could, afford to buy a house and afford their food and so forth, that even if you replaced the financial element of their jobs, you would destroy something that was dignified and purposeful about work itself. And I remember one of the tech CEOs who was there, CEO, you would know his name if I mentioned it. He was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. He said, well, I'm actually not worried about the loss of purpose when people lose their jobs. And I said, okay, well, what do you think is going to replace that sense of purpose? And he said, digital, fully immersive gaming. And then my wife texted me underneath the table and said, we have to get the hell out of here. These people are effing crazy. Now, I don't think that, of course, that CEO's views are representative of most people in this room, but when I think about a lot of the workers, based on what they've seen in the past, are very worried about the future because, frankly, their leadership has failed to serve them. And then I think about this from the perspective of a lot of the tech optimists. I think a lot of the tech optimists, they see overregulation, they see stifling innovation. I mean, you guys are builders. They are builders. And while they may sympathize with those who lost a job, they're much more frustrated that the government won't allow them to build the jobs of the future. And they know that as hard as it is to build a business in digital media, it's still harder to build one in robotics or life sciences or energy in what we call the world of atoms. They see a government that makes their lives harder, and they must trust anyone who looks to that government for aid. And what I'd propose is that each group, our workers, the populists on the one hand, the tech optimists on the other, have been failed by this government. Not just the government of the last administration, but the government in some ways of the last 40 years. Because there were two conceits that our leadership class had when it came to globalization. The first is assuming that we can separate the making of things from the design of things. The idea of globalization was that rich countries would move further up the value chain while the poor countries made the simpler things. You would open an iPhone box and it would say designed in Cupertino, California. Now the implication, of course, is that it would be manufactured in Shenzhen or somewhere else. And yeah, some people might lose their jobs in manufacturing, but they could learn to design, or to use a very popular phrase, learn to code. But I think we got it wrong. It turns out that the geographies that do the manufacturing get awfully good at the designing of things. There are network effects, as you all well understand. The firms that design products work with firms that manufacture. They share intellectual property, they share best practices, and they even sometimes share critical employees. Now, we assume that other nations would always trail us in the value chain, but it turns out that as they got better at the low end of the value chain, they also started catching up on the higher end. We were squeezed from both ends. Now, that was the first conceit of globalization. I think the second is that cheap labor is fundamentally a crutch, and it's a crutch that inhibits innovation. I might even say that it's a drug that too many American firms got addicted to. Now, if you can make a product more cheaply, it's far too easy to do that rather than to innovate. And whether we were offshoring factories to cheap labor economies or importing cheap labor through our immigration system, cheap labor became the drug of Western economies. And I'd say that if you look in nearly every country from Canada to the UK that imported large amounts of cheap labor, you've seen productivity stagnate. I don't think that's not a total happenstance. I think that the connection is very direct. Now, one of the debates you hear on the minimum wage, for instance, is that increases in the minimum wage force firms to automate. So a higher wage at McDonald's means more kiosks. And whatever your views on the wisdom of the minimum wage, I'm not going to comment on that here. Companies innovating in the absence of cheap labor is a good thing. I think most of you are not worried about getting cheaper and cheaper labor. You're worried about innovating, about building new things, about the old formulation of technology is doing more with less. You guys are all trying to do more with less every single day. And so I'd ask my friends, both on the tech optimist side and on the populist side, not to see the failure of the logic of globalization as a failure of innovation. Indeed, I'd say that globalization's hunger for cheap labor is a problem precisely because it's been bad for innovation. Both our working people, our populists, and our innovators gathered here today have the same enemy. And the solution, I believe, is American innovation.
Yeah.
Love this
It's a
guy.
lot there.
I voted for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to mention this idea that the thing that is going to give men purpose in the absence of employment is high resolution VR games is the most hilariously out of touch thing that I've ever heard, but it's not surprising at all. We have this very asexual view of human beings as a result of the fact that we've deconstructed the family and essentially atomized everybody. But one of the reasons for a career, aside from just providing for your family, is really and truly to impress women, to show women that you're capable of providing something, to show them that what you're doing is interesting. And I understand not everyone has the coolest job in the world, right? But literally the least interesting possible job is going to be infinitely more interesting to a woman than I'm a level 27 paladin in the VR game that we're all playing now that AI has taken our jobs.
Did FreedomToons get you your wife?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes. That's exactly what happened.
That's
it was
awesome.
it was actually my incredible podcasting abilities. But the truth, really and truly, like, aside from men wanting to contribute, wanting to build, wanting to be useful, their employment also helps them develop relationships with women. And again, that's even going to be true at a lower level job relative to just playing video games all day. So VR, it's not only not going to replace that internal sense of purpose, but it's not going to land you the other things a job can land you.
Well, and again, John Paul would talk about this. Pope John Paul would talk about this a lot. That there is a dignity that is given, that men get from good work, and that's the problem when you have economies that go into the toilet, where lots of people are unemployed because men want to. We are at our best when we're at service to others, trying to get things accomplished. And there's that dignity in work, and absolutely. So yeah, well, who cares? You can just be a welfare bum and sit at home and play video games. Like, I can't even imagine a worse life. I mean, it just, no.
Talk about a great example of dignified work with St. Joseph too. Solemnity of St. Joseph.
Amen.
Prayer for workers.
That's it.
So he goes on to make a few promises. I couldn't show the full speech, although I wish that I could because it was so good. Highly recommend go listen to the whole thing. But he made some promises to these American business leaders. One, if you want to build in America, that's great. We will cut taxes, cut regulations, and reduce your energy costs. Two, we are going through the necessary process of rearranging the international tariff regime to bring jobs home and manufacturing to our people. Three, get American businesses off the, quote, drug, as he said, of cheap labor through enforcing immigration law, as we talked about earlier on the show. And then four, reducing input costs by unleashing American energy. The dirty secret about AI is that it requires a tremendous amount of energy. Whatever country is able to get to that first in terms of actual manufacturing of the chips, and then also the power required to actually run the algorithms, is going to win this race. He mentioned in the speech as well, I see some people in the chat like, I'm not for AI. And Seamus, you're an animator. I mean, you get it. There's a lot of different.
I'm cautious about a lot of what AI could potentially do. Yeah, there's a lot that makes me nervous. What I would like to see, the reality is the technology is almost certainly not going to go away. So we need to find ways to cope with it. What I would like to see happen is I would like, ideally, to see AI play a role that does not take any creative control from human beings. So, for example, I don't want a future where what an animator does is they just type in, make the character walk across the screen, and then the AI does all of that. That's really upsetting to me as a concept. But, it would be cool if you as an animator were able to do rough drawings of your character walking across the screen, you were able to animate it, you were able to make it work, it only works because of your talent, and then you were able to tell the AI, color it in, or do something that's usually more monotonous to the animator and doesn't add as much human creative value to the work. Things like that, where it could just help with certain enhancements, help people who are making low budget productions create things that Disney is only ordinarily able to create because they're able to hire colorists and etc. and ink artists. That to me is something that could actually be a net benefit. But again, I really am very worried about the potential for AI to just steal the human creative potential in general, where we end up with systems where it just wholesale creates the animation. And I really just want to mention one more thing about this, which is the kind of animation we do it on a very low budget. The reason it's possible is because of computer technology. If we were still working with pencil and paper, we would never be able to do something like this. We would never be able to churn out multiple animated videos a week. So even though there were animators who lost their job as we started to transition from traditional cells to digital cells, which is what effectively every 2D animator uses now, it ended up making animation more accessible to people. And so what I want again, ideally, is for AI to make certain crafts more accessible without a massive budget, without reducing the human creative input. That, I think, is the ideal world. And I think it's more realistic to strive for that than to say shut it down altogether, because it just is not going to get shut down.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
True.
Well, you made the good point. You made the good point about the internet, and I'm even thinking about potential for. You mentioned Disney. I mean, look at look at what Disney's been putting out lately. If anything, if this gives an opportunity to someone with authenticity, actual creativity that wants to tell good, beautiful, true stories that are timeless, essentially, it potentially gives them the power to do something like that. I understand the concerns, but even with the internet, we're podcasting right now. This job wouldn't have existed. I'm employed because of this. So he mentioned the conveyor belt. He mentioned ATM machines. I mean, there's just certain innovations that come along. I don't think the right approach is. You're saying he's mentioning it from like a government.
Kiosks.
Yeah, a government.
He's fan.
Right. He's coming from a government perspective. And I think this is really smart, taking the bull by the horns and trying to attract people to build in America. Because that element needs to be there in my purview.
Yeah.
But from the individual being a part of this, I understand the concerns of the social upheaval that's going to come through. And I think it's actually beautiful to hear him. And I think that he's committed to this, weave in things like human dignity, using the JP2 quote, referencing things like, Labora Exerens was actually on top of Rerum Novarum from Pope Leo, which they were going through tremendous social upheaval during that period of time. I can't remember exactly when that came out, maybe late 1700s, early 1800s, but Industrial Revolution right around the way. So like we go through these revolutions, and it's important to have that Catholic social teaching, human dignity at the forefront. I think that's why it's important to actually consider us a Christian nation, to have Christian leaders a part of this conversation. But I don't think it's something to be scared of. I've experienced it personally. Yes, while specific tasks might go away, I don't think you can actually have success unless the human creative element is paired with AI right now. What you're saying, Seamus, is like the concern would be, and I think there's a potential for it, and we should absolutely protest against this, like AI training AI to create things, as opposed to using AI as an augmentation of human creativity that's put into the system. So
like, again, in an ideal world, so again, I run a small animation studio. We make FreedomToons and a number of other products. All humans, right, working with animation software. If there were ways to take the tasks that the humans on the team hate doing, the little tedious things, if there's a way to get AI to do that stuff, I think that's great. But again, I totally agree. I do not want AI to start taking the actual creative work from people. In an ideal world, what AI allows us to do is build things out in such a way where human creatives are able to be even more creative and generate even more output and even better looking output. Not a world where you just have a person sitting at a keyboard typing what they want into the AI and then having the AI make it. That to me is very bleak.
Yeah, I just wonder how successful that would even be anyway. Like if we truly get an AI, train AI, there's still human consumption element to that. I don't know if they could, who knows? Like that's kind of the crazy thing about this. And people thought the same thing with the internet. Like who knows where this will actually go? And then of course you eventually reach Terminator, right? Where the robots turn against
Skynet,
humans.
baby.
Yeah, exactly. You get to Skynet eventually, but hopefully we're not there too soon. In the lieu of Erica, she was going to read this ad, but something that we should all be aware of, and Seamus, hopefully you get out to your audience. So there's a black mass we talked about going on that's supposed to happen in the Kansas State House. And I'll pull up the petition here. If you would like to be a part of, even if prayer, of course, we're going to be praying on the program Friday because that's when it's supposed to be happening. But we've launched this petition to stop the black mass in Kansas. And I want to give a tremendous amount of credit to Archbishop Nelman for joining this initiative. He's put in his lot. He actually, I believe, is suing on behalf of getting the consecrated host back. Josh, do you have any more color on that?
Yeah, so I mean, he is the archbishop that is in control of this area, and no one is allowed to receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ in the Eucharist or in the consecrated wine, which becomes the blood of Christ, unless they have permission, of course, and you have to accept, the host according to the principles of the Catholic Church. Therefore, if someone has the consecrated host or the consecrated wine, as it were, in their possession, they acquired it by either stealing it outright or under false pretenses. They acquired it. So he has a lot of great. I read through his lawsuit on this, his filing for it. Rock solid. so the law is on his side. And actually, did I send you the video?
Yeah, the Attorney General.
That's right. Chris Kobish came up and gave a little impromptu speech, basically saying he's gonna shut it down too and prevent it from being used. They say black mass. We like to call it a satanic ritual, but of course, the idea behind the satanic ritual is that they desecrate the Eucharist. So it's not even just like these people are bizarre and that they're worshiping Satan. They're actually directly offending the faith of Catholics, but more importantly, our Lord. They are attacking our Lord.
Amen.
And so the Attorney General's like, look, they acquired this property either through deception or through outright theft, and therefore we are not going to allow them to do this ceremony on public grounds. And so I assume there's still going to be a fight. ACLU is involved, because there always are, of course.
Yeah,
but we're asking people, as you say, to pray. Mary Queen of Angels, patroness of Kansas. We're asking people to fast. Pray to St. Joseph would be great. Terror of Demons. Pray to him today.
Amen.
And then, we got people that are organizing a counter protest at the same time. And then after the protest, we're telling people after we protest all this stuff, go across the street. There's going to be adoration and mass of reparation. So
that's awesome.
That's amazing. No, I mean, it's so horrifying, and you're absolutely right. The primary issue with this is that it's offensive to our Lord and it's a desecration of the Eucharist. But I'm also glad that you pointed out that there's also just a very strong legal argument here that because they are doing this with stolen property, it's illegal on those grounds. Even if you don't give assent to Catholic teaching, even if you don't believe in the Eucharist, this is still stolen, right? This is something that was stolen from a Catholic church and is now being used without the Catholic Church's permission. So it's horrible all around, and I hope that legal argument takes. But again, like you said, the most important, the worst part about a satanic mass is not that it's a property rights violation, right?
Of course.
Like the worst part of the satanic mass is that it's a satanic mass. It's a ritual where they're desecrating a Eucharist. And can you imagine if a group of Catholics got together with a statue of Baphomet that they stole and acknowledged that they stole from a satanic temple and just beat to death, inside of a public building? That would never be allowed. We would never be allowed, and frankly, you wouldn't want something like that in your possession anyway, so you wouldn't steal it. But even like a pride flag, if that was stolen by a group of Catholics and then desecrated in a public space, we'd be hearing about how this is the rise of Christofascism and also probably a constitutional crisis of some sort.
Remember when they charged that guy with a hate crime for burning out on a Pride sidewalk or Pride road?
Yeah, like he squealed tires, right?
Yeah, right.
And this is because there's a supply and demand issue with hate crimes. They want there to be a lot of hate crimes, but there just aren't. The media wants to report on them, but they virtually never happen. At least they virtually never happen against the marginalized communities that the left represents,
right?
Or claims to represent. But the whole reason you put a Pride crosswalk down is because you want tire marks to end up on it, so you can go, can you believe that in the year of our common era, 2025, somebody might still hate homosexuals enough to drive their car on a street?
Seamus, dude, I cannot wait to get your perspective. Are you a Gavin Newsom podcast guy?
You know me. I can't start my day without the Gavin Newsom podcast.
So you must have been.
I say, honey, get my coffee, turn the Gavin Newsom podcast on, and bring me my slippers. I'm getting ready for the day. So then I sit there at the edge of my bed, just waiting to hear what does Gavin have to say today.
So you must have caught the Tim Walz episode, or do you suffer through that one, or?
Suffer. I thought it was incredible. I was like, here's the thing, Tom. It's really important, especially during this Lenten season, to mortify ourselves and face our fears.
Yep.
And I, like other conservatives, am terrified of the masculine charisma of Tim Walz. This macho energy he exudes, which is going to steal young men from our side of the aisle. I'm horrified of it. And so, listen, I was quaking the entire time I was listening, but I got some good information out of it.
Yeah. So Seamus, I mean, this is just classic guy stuff, right? We got a football behind him. We got an army book. We got classic cars.
Remember, you got to run pick six.
Yeah, got to run the pick six, fourth down.
That's
So
the
anyway.
hilarious thing is like, it's so funny because I love classic cars, by the way. I love classic cars.
Well, you don't have a book behind you right now. It says classic cars. So
hold on. I'm sure I can find something on the bookshelf. Just give me a second. Let me stall here for a minute. I do love classic cars, but one thing that I thought was hilariously out of touch is he was working on this beautiful old classic. And he was like, you have to check your fuel filter. And I'm not sure if you guys remember that little campaign.
I do.
Stunt they
I
did.
can change a filter. Yeah.
I can change. Yeah. So it's like, well, you changed an air filter. That's super cool. But the thing about that, which was really out of touch, is like your average working class person can't afford a cool classic car. Like it's a cool thing and we like it. But, the idea that you're able to have this, you're kind of like showing off your fancy toy in a way, if that makes sense, which again, I have nothing against the person owning a classic car. I think it's awesome. And if you can afford it, go do it. But it doesn't exactly scream like I'm an average working class guy to have this really cool antique car, right? It doesn't scream I'm struggling. It says, wow, I have enough disposable income to have purchased this cool thing.
Yeah, and bought the air filter off Amazon.
And you got the air filter off of Amazon, which who knows how much that costs.
Like $20. So I suffered through it, mortification, all that. Here's the clip that came out of it. To preface, he spent the first part of the episode to say it's important that we go into new spaces and we engage the new people that maybe didn't come out and vote for us. And then he landed on this.
Obsessively, which I think, again, is their obsession, their weirdness. We buy their frame on these issues of sexuality, but their whole thing is that they spent all their time, these guys on Fox News, that Walz is gay, he's not masculine, he doesn't coach football the way he should or doesn't. What do you think about this? I mean,
it's
this misogyny in here that's happening.
Yeah, well, but this notion of masculinity is deeply part of it. That's one of the. I mean, I think it goes. And you can look at the reasons why we've had this sort of dialectic over the Me Too movement. We've had this dialectic even prior to the Me Too movement. This notion
of fight it.
This notion
I think
of
I could kick most of their ass. I do think that if they want to do it. I know I can outrun them, but I don't know if we're going to fall into that place where we want to. Okay, we challenge you to a WWE fight here type of thing.
Counter it, but it's a natural reaction. I think it's one of the reasons we're losing so many men. And again, it's multi-ethnic. It's not just white men. We're losing them. We're losing them to these guys online. We're losing them people that I'm bringing on this podcast as well. That's why I brought.
These are bad guys, though. These are bad guys.
But they exist, and we could deny they exist. They exist. Not only they exist, they persist, and they're actually influencing young kids every single day.
How do we push some of those guys back under a rock?
I think we have to first understand what their motivations are. I think we have to understand what they're actually doing. And
you don't
I think
that's
it's
racism and misogyny?
I think there's a lot of that, but I don't think it's exclusively that. When you talk to a guy like Steve Bannon, he reminded me a little bit of my grandfather when he talks about working folks and he talks about how we hollowed out the industrial core of this country. I understand that. But we can dismiss the notion of election denialism. We could completely dismiss what he did on January 6th, but I don't think you can dismiss what he's saying. Reminds me a lot of what Bernie Sanders was saying. Reminds me a lot of what Democrats said 20, 30 years ago. I mean, he's arguing
he hates
against
Musk, right? He hates
Musk. He hates the oligarchy. He totally agrees with you on the concentration of monopolistic powers. He completely dismisses the notion that we should extend the tax cuts for corporations and the very wealthy. He thinks we should lower taxes for the middle class and wants to see increased taxes.
I can't message.
I mean, I love the love
I can't message that women shouldn't have.
But I think if we,
he eventually gets around to saying, I'm going to push. We need to push them back under a rock.
Well, yeah, I mean, Gavin Newsom is actually given an appropriate amount of love for and faithfully representing Steve Bannon's views, which is pretty shocking. And yeah, I mean, Tim Walz, he did, when he would go to these rallies, he did kind of seem like he pranced a little bit and people made fun of it. But, does that mean he's gay? No, not necessarily, whatever. The bigger problem isn't that we think Tim Walz might be gay. The problem is that you hate white young men. So men in their 20s are like, okay, so if everyone is special except for white men, then there's kind of like a target on my back. Well, that's the problem. I mean, give me a break.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was some justified outrage in 2020 and cities got burned down in mostly peaceful protests that we have no right to complain about, and I would never dare to.
Right.
And what we were told is that this happened because rioting is the language of the unheard, which is of course true. How could you possibly disagree with that? But then anytime the right does something that the left dislikes, they'll cherry pick the few examples of a right winger becoming violent, which is again just unbelievably rare compared to left wing violence. But they'll cherry pick right wingers becoming violent or right wingers doing things that they consider concerning and that are optically bad that an average person might consider concerning. And they'll go, well, the only solution is to silence them. This is what he said. These guys need to go back under a rock. Well, it's interesting because I was told when you silence people, when you don't listen to them, you get a really horrible backlash. I was told rioting is the language of the unheard.
Silence is violence, actually.
Me that like when it comes to white men, actually the solution is to just stamp them out, shut them up, and not listen to them.
Yeah, silence is violence.
You got a point there.
Also, maybe this has something to do with it. I don't know. Just the thought. So Elon Musk just brought home the astronauts from space. And then at the same time,
Tim Walz couldn't get out.
Tim Walz was saying he now all of a sudden is invested in, or not invested, he's interested in the stock market. Because if you remember, his big campaign promise was, I'm not rich. I don't own any stocks. I'm just a ho-hum football coach from Minnesota that wants tampons in the right bathrooms.
Boys'
but
locker room.
He now has downloaded a stock app and put a notification on Tesla so that he can get happy every time the stock goes down. Simultaneously, Elon just brought the boys back home from space. Maybe that's why young men aren't appealed to that message.
I mean,
like we kind of want space.
Some of us are amateur, when it comes to the stock market. I mean, I'm thinking about investing. They got that. You hear about that mutual fund that tracks all the purchases of stock that Nancy
like
Pelosi
Crenshaw
makes.
and Pelosi.
Yeah, I've actually talked to those guys. I've talked to those guys.
Oh, you have?
Yes. Yeah,
they got to be awesome.
What they're doing is hilarious.
Yeah, they got to be awesome.
But no, it's insane. And the other reason here, and this is extremely important actually, to understanding Tim Walz's psychology, the psychology of the left, and why they're losing young men. It's easy to point to, and I think you're correct in doing so, that they hate white men, right? And they go, how are we losing white men and how do we get them back? What they're really saying is like, how can we get white men back without ever saying anything good about them? Please don't make us say anything good about them. How do we get them back without having to do that? But there's also an attitude present that's just generally unattractive to men. And I think even if they were willing to sing white men's praises, white men would still be repelled. And I think men in general would still be repelled by their party because of the kind of attitude you saw from Tim Walz on stage. It is very abnormal for a man to be upset about the success of another man. There's something about that which seems just very like a manifestation, like a feminine manifestation of a dark triad way of thinking. Obviously, it's not to say like this sin is something only women commit. I just think that the way original sin affects men and women is different, or it manifests differently. So it just seems as if like a man is more likely to be tempted to some kind of sin of wrath that results in him like going out and beating somebody up. We've seen this, and that's obviously bad. But when women are tempted to the sin of wrath, it seems to be more correlated to the kind of behavior you saw from Tim Walz up there, where it's like, I sneakily look at my phone and see that their life isn't good by scouring things about them on the internet. It's just fundamentally not appealing to men, and it's just not relatable to us.
Yeah,
I mean, there are people who I would say I consider political enemies, but I'm not scouring the internet to find out what bad things have happened to them so I can feel a sense of pleasure about it. That just feels fundamentally not masculine.
I'd say it's un-American too.
Un-American as well.
Like we listened to the dynamism speech from JD Vance. Like, what do Americans want? Americans want in theory that they can do anything, that they can succeed, that they can live in a place and get support from the government
2%.
Basically to do what they want to do.
And
2%.
I would venture to guess. Oh, sorry.
2% kept us from those two, those roles being reversed, and the other guy being vice president.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Well, I just want to throw this out there. I think, and this is Love Dr. Seamus speaking for the women here, because I know how the ladies think. Let me tell you all. But I really do think if you ask most women about the kind of behavior we just witnessed from Tim Walz there, they would tell you that, like, yes, the worst woman I've ever known was exactly like that. You know, like, yes, I had that one friend I don't talk to anymore, and that is so something she would do.
Queen bee. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, dropping passive aggressive comments in an Instagram post or something like that.
Exactly. Like, exactly.
Love Dr. Seamus.
Yeah, no, Trump, you should get that haircut.
Yeah, right. Nice
great
haircut.
With a pixie cut, Elon.
She didn't use the right emojis when she said nice haircut, so therefore I think that she's making a point.
Oh my word.
Okay, I'm stepping out of the Love Dr. seat. I've never been there. I'm still trying to figure out women to this day. So okay,
I never needed information.
Seamus, dude, I got you on speed dial.
Yeah, listen, ask a cartoonist.
Oh man, yeah, I'm asking a cartoonist. All right, I know we're a little bit over.
Yeah,
if we can squeeze it in real
picture.
quick. We got the Twilight Zone. Josh, you're up first.
Well, hey, important milestone for my family. My 2011 Suburban, rocking it out yesterday, hitting the $250,000 mark there, buddy.
Wow.
Yes.
Well
That's
done.
a dadmobile, dude.
That is kicking it.
That is a dadmobile. You got that kind of mileage on that sucker? Goodness.
I mean, I zoomed in on the photo so you couldn't see all the, engine alert.
Congrats, Josh. That's big. That's big time.
Another thing I want to share is, we get a lot of love for the vice president today. He reads Catholic Vote, and he shared it on his Twitter feed, an article about the former speechwriter for Ronald Reagan who coined the phrase "evil empire," passed away this week. So shout, we pray for the repose of his soul for Tony, but also just, it's cool. Vice President of the United States is tweeting out articles from Catholic Vote. So I appreciate that.
It's amazing. I think it's because of our loop ads that we're doing at FreedomToons.
Yes,
no it couldn't hurt.
No question.
I'm sure JD Vance is a huge fan of FreedomToons.
Unquestionably. Well, he needs to get his love advice from
exactly.
FreedomToons,
he needs to tune into the Love Dr. Seamus show.
Love Dr. Seamus. That could be a whole new. Okay, we'll get in the lab on that one, Seamus. We'll talk it over.
Let's have a conversation about it. I've got a new podcast I want to try to sell here.
Look, man, I'd be in. Okay, Seamus, what you got?
All right, so wow, mine was really dark actually. So we're gonna go from a more jovial attitude to something really pretty somber here. But it's total clown world nonsense. It's horrible. It's terrifying. It is a Twilight Zone-esque moment. And it's the kind of thing that we've seen repeatedly over the past several years, epitomized in a particularly brutal, and disgusting way. But essentially what you have is footage of a mother explaining that her daughter was forced to use the bathroom and locker room with a male in school. And it doesn't just stop there. That's horrible enough. But unfortunately, we've heard stories like that so often that we're actually desensitized to them. And this one gets even worse. The girls complained that they didn't want to change in front of him. And the school staff went into the locker room to make sure that they did. That is truly horrifying. That is truly horrifying.
Jeez.
That's abuse. I mean, that is sexual abuse.
See, that's where we need people in handcuffs.
I agree with you completely. I mean, people need to be arrested for this. It's so unfortunate that we seem to have this attitude, but that because a particular form of misconduct is trendy and popular, that we shouldn't be locking people up for either allowing it to happen or actively participating in it, which is what we see these schools doing. And in this particular instance, according to this mother's claim, this school doing it in a very egregious way.
New administration could be, instead of labeling people mad about that domestic terrorist, maybe they could look into that and lock some people up.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to the golden age of America. Okay, so I got two quick ones. Back in the JD Vance beat, we got him just posted up with some Dominicans in the White House on St. Patrick's Day.
That's awesome.
Come on, man. Now, look at this guy. I mean, JD Vance is a big guy. This guy is a unit.
He's huge.
Dude.
He had to duck to get in.
Yeah.
Some people knew the name of this guy, said he's awesome. I don't know him personally.
He looks like a big ox.
Yeah, I was like,
the narrow gate.
Thomas Aquinas vibes. I'm sure this guy's a beast.
This guy had to bend over just to get into the building.
All right, so that was Dominican's very intellectually serious. Let's get to a little bit more of a intellectually unserious. So You may be aware federal judges are basically just blocking executive actions willy-nilly. It's kind of their new favorite thing. The most recent is a hold on the transgender ban in the military that came from the commander-in-chief of the military and his secretary of defense. In the opinion, so I did look at it confirmed, making a reference to women being included in the sequel when passage of the 19th Amendment granted them the right to vote in 1920. Here's the footnote. See Lin-Manuel Miranda, Hamilton, an American musical.
Yes, they cited Hamilton and included in the sequel. Wow.
That seems like a bit of a meta analysis. I think there was something that predated Hamilton.
Are we allowed to drink at 12 p.m. on a solemnity? Because I think I need a shot after hearing that. That's insane.
Yeah. Yep. We're at the
Hamilton. Like he didn't quote Alexander Hamilton. Like
no. Let's make that abundantly clear. No, abundantly clear. Hamilton the musical was cited by a federal judge. First off, what
did his citation rhyme?
It was actually Seamus. How dare you assume?
Did he sing it?
No, Seamus. This is a female judge. Not only is she a female judge, she's one of the first openly gay female judges appointed by Biden.
And she quoted a musical Supreme Court document. This is the most insane thing. This is like something Fox News would fearmonger might happen if we appoint the first openly gay female judge. She's going to be quoting musicals.
No, Seamus, let's just stop. Can you think of something any more American than a judge who was born in Uruguay, moved here, openly gay, quoting musicals in Supreme Court decisions or in court decisions that are blocking the executive branch of government from actually enjoying their authority over the military that was set out in the Constitution of the United States? What is more American than that?
America is an idea, and I think it's that idea. I think that's the idea.
Yeah, you got any strong thoughts on America being an idea? Got a closing rant in you?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I have the opportunity to rant about it as opposed to dropping a joke about it, but saying America is an idea is such a vapid, nonsensical slogan. Yes, of course, like everything on some level is an idea when we are discussing it in terms of words. There's a concept for America that exists in our minds, but it is obviously more than just an idea in the sense that like literally anything is. No, a country is not just an idea. A country will have specific ideas governing it, sure, but there's a lot more than that. And also I'm totally plagiarizing Matt Walsh here, but I have to because he said it best. And once you give a citation, it's actually not plagiarism. I learned that. She didn't plagiarize Hamilton, she cited it. Matt Walsh made a very good point, which is that most people who tell you that America is an idea will not actually tell you what the idea is. They have no way of really defining what the country actually is. Like it's a melting pot, okay? What's melting into it? If somebody hands me something to drink, I'm like, what is in this drink? Oh, just a couple things I melted together. What? What did you melt together in this? I'm not drinking this. Like, you want me to ingest this if you're not even telling me what's in it? Like, I have to accept your idea of America as an idea without you even telling me what that idea is? I don't think so.
Well, America is actually then an idea of an idea.
It's an idea of an idea.
If you think about it,
you have an infinite regression.
And then if you really get to the bottom of that race, it's actually no, America isn't anything. It's an America. It's right, exactly. It's whatever I say it is.
I live in a country. Sorry.
Yeah, whatever I say it is. So, yeah, boys. Hamilton jump scare during reading through some legal documents this morning.
Actually shocking.
Actually hilarious. Well, Seamus, dude, thanks for coming on the show. Please, you're beloved by the audience, but FreedomToons, if they haven't checked it out.
FreedomToons. Check out FreedomToons. I love you guys all so much. Also, for my final Twilight Zone reveal, this microphone's not connected. I thought it would make my sound more professional, and it was already set up. You're hearing me through a built-in microphone. So don't take my horrible audio quality to be indicative of the Shure SM7B because it's really a fantastic mic.
That is a good closing shot. So.
Check me out at FreedomToons.
FreedomToons, and soon to come, Seamus the Love Doctor, potential new product.
Love Dr. Seamus, right
Love Dr.
here.
Seamus.
Yeah.
We'll talk on it. We'll talk. But best way to support the show, go check out Charity Mobile. You can join the Champions Club. Best way to support us, catholicvote.org/champions. Leave us a review, drop a comment, all that good stuff. Head over to YouTube, 25,000 strong and growing. And yeah, but pray for us. The most important thing, St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us.
And
St. Joseph.
St. Joseph, pray for us.